She called me toxic for demanding a DNA test and said a real man wouldn't need proof. So I collected evidence and waited. At her welcome baby party, in front of 55 witnesses, I read the results out loud, and her entire story collapsed instantly. Hey Reddit, my wife thought she could play me, gaslight me, and lock me in with a baby that wasn't mine. So I stayed calm, built the record, and waited until she couldn't twist the truth anymore. Before we get to that, let me start from the beginning. I'm a forensic accountant, not the tax return kind. The kind that insurance companies and law firms bring in when they think someone's lying about money and need it documented well enough to hold up in court. I find the number that doesn't belong, the transaction that shows up 1 week after someone swore it couldn't, the document whose date quietly contradicts everything else in the folder. 9 years of that. Every single case leaves a paper trail that tells the truth eventually, whether the people in the room like it or not. I'm telling you that up front because it explains every move I made over the months that followed, and why I made them in the exact order I did. Her name was Kayla. We met at a mutual friend's housewarming, one of those low-key Saturday afternoon things where you end up talking to someone way longer than you planned and leave thinking about them the whole drive home. She was an interior designer, ran her own studio, mostly residential projects. Strong opinions about natural light, zero interest in anything outside her lane, which honestly I respected. We talked the whole afternoon. Got her number before I left. 2 years of dating. She was self-directed, genuinely funny, independent in the real way, not the Instagram caption way. I proposed after 2 years on a Tuesday night during takeout at home because she'd always said public proposals felt manufactured, and I'd been paying close enough attention to know she meant it. We got married 14 months later. Small ceremony, 45 people, Friday evening, nothing fancy, exactly what we both wanted. Before the wedding, we signed a prenup. Her idea, actually. She wanted to protect the studio she'd built from scratch, and I thought that was completely fair. My attorney drafted it. We both had separate legal review before anyone touched a pen. The terms were clean. Separate property stays separate. No joint debt without both signatures. An infidelity clause that kills spousal support and shifts attorney fees to the person who cheated, and a bad faith deception clause that allows reimbursement for legal costs when someone commits deliberate fraud inside the marriage. She read every page. Her attorney approved it. She signed it over coffee on a Thursday morning 2 months before the wedding and called it just paperwork. I made 3 certified copies and put them in the fireproof document box in my home office. At the time, that prenup felt like 2 responsible adults doing the responsible thing. It turned out to be the smartest thing I'd ever done before age 33, and I'd barely even thought hard about it. The first 2 years of the marriage were solid. I mean genuinely solid. Not solid for a couple solid, but actually good. We built something that felt intentional. Nothing to flag. The shift started about 8 months before everything fell apart. She landed a new client named Caden, lifestyle influencer type. Cold plunge videos at sunrise, meal prep content, long captions about protecting your energy. 250,000 followers. Ran some kind of mindset coaching program on the side. He hired Kayla's studio to redesign his home and set up the visual vibe for his content shoots. That was supposed to be all it was. Within 2 weeks of that contract starting, she mentioned him 4 times in under a minute of conversation. People don't drop someone's name 4 times in 60 seconds, unless that person is living rent-free somewhere they've got no business being. Her phone started going face down on tables when I was nearby. Weekends that had always been free started filling up with stuff that had suddenly become urgent. A vendor meeting, a site visit, some material delivery that absolutely had to be supervised in person. I said fine every single time and kept her feeling like everything was normal. Things in the marriage started feeling off around the same time. Not dramatically, just this low-level withholding, like affection had turned into something I needed to earn back instead of something that just existed between us. She tried once in late January to get me to cancel a day trip for a client meeting, said she had something she wanted to do together, that I always chose work over her. I told her I had a commitment and I'd be home by 7. She tried again, softer. Same answer. I left. She was cold for 2 days. I didn't engage with the dynamic at all, kept my behavior identical to what it had always been and started keeping notes. Then one night at dinner with her sister in early February, she said, without being asked and without looking at me, that Caden was more emotionally evolved than most men. Said it like she figured it was too subtle for me to catch. I set down my fork, didn't say anything. Told the table I had an early call and needed to get home. Walked out without waiting for the check. She sent 3 apology texts before I even hit the parking lot exit. The first 2 were apologies with explanations buried inside them. The third one was still mostly just her explaining herself again. I replied with one word, noted, never brought it up again. And she never knew the encrypted notes file had been open for 3 weeks before that dinner happened. That's basically how I operate. Say my piece once, make it clear once, handle it once without drama. Then I start writing stuff down. A work case pulled me to Portland in early March. Insurance fraud, falsified commercial property damage claims across multiple locations, required in-person document review that couldn't be handed off to someone else. I was gone from March 4th through March 13th, 10 days. Gave Kayla 3 weeks notice. She said to have a safe trip, kissed me on the cheek, and went back to her laptop. The way she texted while I was away felt off. Short answers, long gaps, like she was managing a story. Texts came back after long gaps, short and complete, the kind that answer the specific question, and then close the thread without opening anything new. She called twice in 10 days, both calls under 5 minutes. I checked her Instagram. She posted twice during those 10 days, both from events connected to Caden. I came home March 13th. By that evening, she'd shifted into a mode I was starting to recognize. Fights with no logical foundation. Said I was emotionally absent. Said the marriage had started to feel like two people just sharing an address. Said she hadn't felt seen in months. Every line came out too smooth, too steady, like she'd gone over it beforehand. I've sat across from enough people giving sworn testimony to know language that was worked on in advance. This was worked on in advance. April 15th, she sat across from me at the kitchen table and told me she was pregnant. I kept my face neutral and let her talk. The doctor had estimated 5 to 6 weeks gestational age. Gestational age is counted from the last menstrual period, which typically runs about 2 weeks before conception actually happens. So 5 to 6 weeks gestational put the likely conception window at 3 to 4 weeks before April 15th, somewhere in mid to late March. I was back from Portland on March 13th. Late March put me home. That was what she was counting on. Our last actually intimate night together had been in late February, which was well outside that window by any honest count. But first trimester dating carries a margin. The window can be argued as wider, and she had people ready to make exactly that argument. She wasn't betting on certainty. She was betting on enough softness in the estimate to make a test feel like an overreaction. She looked at me across the table. Say something. I am. I'm listening. Are you happy? I'm careful. She started crying. Said she was scared and needed to know I was in this with her. I held her and said what a husband says in that moment. That night I lay in the dark, running the numbers until 2 in the morning. The next day I drove to work, locked my office, and researched at-home paternity kits on a private browser during lunch. Ordered one to my office address. It arrived 3 days later in a plain shipping box. I logged it into my locked cabinet, opened a new encrypted notes file on a personal drive I kept off my work network, and made the first entry on April 16th. Then I went back to work. The anatomy scan was late June. I went. The technician confirmed a due date of December 17th. Kayla said, a half beat too fast. That's perfect. I looked at her. Is it? She looked back at the screen. The technician kept typing. I ran the math in my head. 40 weeks from December 17th put the estimated LMP start around March 9th. Conception typically follows that by about 2 weeks, late March. I was home by March 13th, not a sliver. A window she could work with. What made it workable was the uncertainty baked into early pregnancy dating. A careful doctor doesn't give you a precise date. They give you a range, and a range is what the whole thing ran on. On the drive home, I brought up a paternity test, framed it as standard documentation, the kind careful people keep on file. We'll do the test, I said. Her whole demeanor flipped. Not hurt, not confused, defensive. The defensive of someone who already knows the answer and can't have you finding it. She said a real man wouldn't need proof to trust his wife. Said requesting a test was a violation of what a marriage is built on. Said if I actually loved her the way a husband is supposed to, I wouldn't even be capable of saying those words. Then she looked at me and delivered it clean. If you demand a paternity test, it means you're toxic and I'm leaving. No room for actual discussion, no acknowledgement that I might have a point. Just take her word for it or lose the marriage. I looked at her for a second. Understood. She exhaled. Said she was so relieved. Said she knew I'd come around. Reached over and put her hand on my arm. I put my hand over hers. We drove the rest of the way home. That night, after she was asleep, I sat in my home office and thought through the next 7 months. 4 days after that conversation, I found the group chat. We kept a shared tablet on the kitchen counter. Recipe lookups, baby registry browsing, that kind of low-key shared device. Kayla had left it unlocked one evening with a messaging app open on the screen. The thread was labeled Operation BC. Members, Kayla, her sister Renata, and 2 close friends listed by first name only. I read the entire conversation from the beginning. Then, I connected my laptop to the tablet's cloud sync, exported the full thread with timestamps and metadata to an encrypted folder on my personal drive and put the tablet back exactly where I found it. I didn't change my expression or my behavior for the rest of that evening. We watched something on television. I don't even remember what. Some nature documentary, I think. She fell asleep on the couch. I carried her to bed and lay awake for an hour staring at the ceiling. What was in that chat removed any remaining benefit of the doubt. Explicit strategy about keeping conception dates vague and relying on the doctor's natural estimation range to carry the narrative. A message from Renata. As long as you stay in the window, he can't prove anything without a test. A line directly telling Kayla to respond to any paternity test request by calling it toxic and threatening to leave if he pushed. A note about getting me to sign the birth certificate before the baby was a week old, with the specific reasoning spelled out. Once he signs it, the test doesn't matter legally. And one message from Kayla to the group that read, Caden thinks it's his too. He's just not ready to deal with it yet. Laughing emoji. Renata replied, we'll figure it out. So it wasn't a mistake. It was a plan they had all sat down and worked out together. I read that sequence 4 times. Confirmed I was reading what I thought I was reading. Then I closed the folder, went to the kitchen, and made dinner. What followed was 7 months of me keeping the most straight face I've ever had to keep. I painted the nursery on a Saturday without complaint, built the crib, attended every doctor appointment I was invited to, held her hand through ultrasounds, engaged with the name debate with full apparent sincerity. Her mother started calling me a natural in front of extended family, and I smiled genuinely enough every time that nobody questioned it. There were hard moments during those 7 months, honestly. Nights when she'd come sit next to me on the couch, put her head on my shoulder, ask if I was excited about the baby. And I'd say yes and mean some version of it, because there was still a real possibility, however small, that the math had a different explanation I hadn't found yet. I held on to that possibility until the moment I actually opened the envelope. What I did not do was show any of that doubt on the outside. Not once. The vault grew in the background. Group chat export with timestamps and full metadata. Screenshots from Kayla's laptop on nights she left it open near me. Direct messages with Caden spanning from my Portland trip through late March. Messages where she told him she couldn't stop thinking about him, and he told her the night before had been everything. The Portland messages proved the affair was active during that trip. The later ones showed it kept going well into the conception window. My complete Portland itinerary with hotel receipts and client check-in logs. All of it in encrypted folders. I also found, in a folder on that shared tablet Kayla had forgotten to clear out, audio voice notes Caden had sent her during the affair. She'd archived them instead of deleting them. His voice referencing specific dates across March and into late March. Actually, back up. I should mention I didn't make any kind of move on those files right away. I sat on them for 2 weeks before I felt like I had a clean, documented process for pulling them. That's the kind of thing that matters later. I eventually copied the folder to my personal encrypted drive and routed it to my lawyer once I had her engaged. Caden's loan application crossed my desk in October. He'd applied for commercial property financing through a firm that occasionally contracted my services for document review. His numbers were inflated in obvious ways, basic red flags a first-year auditor would catch. I recused myself immediately per ethics requirements, documented the conflict of interest, and routed everything through compliance. I made 0 further contact. Compliance received it and handled it through their own process. That referral became its own separate problem for Caden several months later. Then, mid-November, a direct message came in on my professional platform from a woman named Priya. She said she'd been in a relationship with Caden for about 8 months, ending the year before. She'd ended things after finding out he'd fathered a child with another woman during their relationship, a child he refused to acknowledge and had made 0 contact with since. She'd been watching some of the professional network activity around my name and Caden's and had spent 2 weeks deciding whether to reach out. She said she didn't know the full details of my situation, but knew his patterns well enough to recognize their shape from a distance. She attached 2 photos without being asked. The first was a medical document listing heterochromia as a congenital trait on Caden's paternal side. The second was a screenshot of a message he'd sent her during their relationship, casual, mid-conversation about genetics, where he mentioned the eye thing ran in his dad's family and that he'd passed it to at least one kid he knew about. Timestamp clearly visible. Her message ended, "I hope this helps. Good luck." I forwarded everything to my lawyer's folder with one label, Exhibit F, sent Priya a brief acknowledgement. She replied, "I figured. Take care of yourself." I closed the thread. The vault was complete. December 17th. A boy. 6 pounds 14 ounces. The delivery nurse put him in my arms, and I looked at him the way I look at any piece of evidence I've been waiting months on. Caden had mentioned his heterochromia on a wellness podcast I'd listened to once in October. One brown eye, one eye with a distinctive blue-gray sectoral patch running through the iris, Rare genetic thing that ran in his dad's family, he said. The baby had the exact same mark in his left eye. Same iris, same position. That was the visual marker. 2 days later, the hard marker came through routine blood typing at the pediatrician. I'm blood type O. The baby came back type AB. Under standard ABO inheritance, a type O parent carries the genotype OO and can only pass an O allele to a child. Producing a type AB child requires one A allele and one B allele, neither of which I carry. The probability isn't just low. Under normal inheritance, it's 0. I printed the lab record and added it to the vault that afternoon. In the delivery room, I held the baby, smiled at everyone who needed me to smile, cut the cord when the nurse asked, said the things a husband says in that room. I played every part of the role that room expected, played it well. The hospital gave him a pacifier on day 1, small, yellow rubber. He latched on immediately and barely let go for the next 2 days. Day 2, morning. Wait, it was actually early morning before the shift change. Kayla in the shower. Baby sleeping in the bassinet. Nurse stepped out to pull discharge paperwork. I had approximately 5 minutes. I moved to the bassinet, took the pacifier, and retrieved the sealed kit from my jacket's inner pocket. The same kit I'd loaded into that pocket the morning we left for the hospital, months after first storing it in my office cabinet, because I'd decided weeks earlier exactly when I would need it, and had been ready since the night before. Swabbed the inside of the pacifier with the first sterile swab and sealed it. Swabbed my own cheek with the second and sealed that one. Both containers back into the zip pouch inside my jacket. Washed the pacifier at the sink, dried it, put it back exactly where it had been. Sat down in the chair with my phone. Kayla came out of the bathroom. How is he? Still sleeping. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked at him for a while. When the nurse came with birth certificate paperwork before discharge, Kayla reached for the pen before the nurse finished speaking. The nurse said, "You have 5 days to submit it if you'd prefer to." "We're signing now," Kayla said. I looked at the nurse calmly. "I'd prefer to take it home and review everything carefully before we file anything official. I want to make sure all the information is accurate before I attach my name to it." The nurse noted it in the file. Kayla looked at me. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I don't sign my name to guesses." She didn't respond. The exchange had been witnessed by the nurse and logged. I noted it. I didn't go straight to the parking structure. I walked 2 blocks to the FedEx location I'd confirmed on maps the week before the birth, sent the kit overnight to the lab, then walked back and got the car. Over the following days, I kept deferring the birth certificate whenever it came up. It came up twice before the 5-day window closed. Text from Kayla. "Did you file it?" Me. "Next week." Kayla. "It's 5 days." Me. "I know. After the hospital window passes, late filing becomes a separate administrative process. Different form, different office." She understood that. The certificate never got filed under my name either way. But the paperwork delay was just a buffer, not the actual protection. My lawyer had been contacted December 19th. The court motion was already being prepared. The real protection was the legal process already in motion. December 28th. Results at my office. Building mostly empty between the holidays. I opened the envelope alone at my desk. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. Excluded. I read it once, set it face down on the desk, looked out the window for a while, just sat there. Then I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. We met December 30th. I brought the full vault, the group chat export with timestamps and metadata, the direct messages with Caden covering the affair period, the archived audio notes from the shared tablet, Priya's statement with both photos, the blood type pediatric record, the private test results with the case ID, my complete Portland itinerary with hotel receipts and client documentation, and a clean written timeline I'd maintained since April 16th. My lawyer spent 90 minutes going through everything, asked 6 precise questions, and told me this was among the cleanest documentation packages she'd seen for a case like this. 3 directives from her. First, initiate a court-grade chain of custody paternity test through proper legal process immediately. That would serve as the foundation for formally rebutting the marital presumption of paternity in court. Second, don't tip my hand to Kayla, Caden, or anyone connected to them before the motion was filed. Third, all communications involving the marriage, the separation, or any legal proceedings route through her office from that point forward, without exception. The motion to rebut marital presumption was filed January 2nd. The court-grade test was initiated through certified chain of custody that same day. The prenup was submitted to the court as the governing document for the divorce proceedings being filed simultaneously. By January 3rd, I'd transferred my personal funds to a separate account at a different institution, frozen our joint accounts pending the legal process, and removed Kayla as an authorized user from my credit accounts. All of that happened before any confrontation, before any reveal. While Kayla was still focused on the welcome baby party her mother was planning for January 6th. Her mother had asked in late December if I could help with some logistics. I confirmed the guest list. Approximately 55 guests from both families, her friends, my friends, a handful of mutual colleagues. I also offered to handle the printed materials. Her mother thanked me and seemed genuinely touched. She had no idea why I was so interested in handling the printing. I designed 2 versions of the thank you inserts. Version 1 was clean and standard. I showed Kayla a proof. She approved the design without asking to read the inside text, and I thanked her. Version 2 had the same cover. The inside had 4 elements: the private test result with the lab case ID and date, the baby's blood type beside mine, with 1 sentence explaining why those 2 types can't produce the result on record, a statement that I hadn't filed as the legal father, and that proceedings to rebut marital presumption were already filed with the court, and a note that the full group chat export was in legal counsel's possession as a formal exhibit. At the bottom was a QR code linking to a document folder my lawyer had prepared: the private test, the blood type record, 4 group chat screenshots covering the key strategy lines, and Priya's statement with both of her attached photos. 60 copies printed at a shop across town on January 4th, in my trunk that afternoon. The lab envelope went into my jacket's inner pocket the morning of January 6th. Kayla showed up at my office building unannounced on January 5th. The front desk called up. I came down to the lobby. She was already mid-sentence when she saw me come through the door. "You're not going to do this to me right now." "I'm not doing anything. My lawyer is." "Talk to me." "No." I went back upstairs. Front desk logged the visit on my request. The venue was what Kayla's mother's real care and reasonable budget produced: draped tables, blue balloon arrangements, a banner over the gift station, flowers at every setting, plated catering. A room that felt warm and carefully put together by someone who genuinely wanted it to be. About 55 guests filling the space through the early afternoon. I made the full circuit for 2 hours, talked to everybody, held the baby twice when he came my way, said the right things, laughed when I was supposed to laugh, poured coffee, acted like the guy everyone in that room still thought I was. Nobody had any reason to think otherwise. At 2:40 p.m., I walked out to my car, got the bag of second version inserts from the trunk, and brought them back inside under a jacket folded over my arm. Set the bag beneath my chair. Gift opening started at 3. Kayla sat at the front of the room, baby in his carrier beside her, and guests brought gifts forward. Newborn clothes in multiple sizes, a diaper bag, a white noise machine, gift cards to every major baby supply store. Room applause after each one. Kayla thanking each person by first name. Her mother photographing everything. My mother sitting 2 tables over, emotional from about the 4th gift onward. I waited until Kayla was down to the last 3 items on the table. Then I stood up. I told the room I had something to share before we closed out. A few people looked up expecting a toast. Kayla looked at me with a half smile that had uncertainty running underneath it, the same tell I'd been cataloging for months. I told the room that I'd done what any person with my professional background would do when the numbers stopped adding up. I documented everything and had it independently verified. I pulled the envelope from my jacket, held the document up so the room could confirm it was a real lab document, letterhead, case number, date, before I read from it. Then I read the result. 0.00% probability of paternity. Excluded. Not the father. 3 full seconds of nothing. The kind of silence where a whole room gets hit with something at once, and nobody knows what to do with it. Then it just fell apart. Kayla stood up and ran the playbook. The exact playbook I'd read in the group chat export months earlier. Said the document was fabricated. Said I was abusive and controlling. Said this was a sustained pattern of emotional manipulation she'd been dealing with throughout the entire pregnancy, and that everyone present needed to understand what kind of man they were looking at. She hit every line in sequence: toxic, unsafe, narcissistic, calculated attack on a vulnerable postpartum mother, about 45 seconds of it, rapid and polished. I let her run the whole thing without interrupting once. "You're lying," she said. "Scan it." I walked the room and placed an insert in front of every person at every table. People opened them, several pulled out phones and scanned the QR code. The document folder loaded on their screens. They started reading the group chat screenshots. The room shifted as the screens populated. Renata saw her own messages in the export and sat back down without speaking. Kayla's mother had stopped taking photos and was standing against the wall holding the insert with both hands. One of Kayla's close friends stood up, set her insert face down on the table, and walked quietly out of the room without saying a word. Someone near the back said quietly, "This is real." Kayla pivoted, said the screenshots were out of context, said the QR code led to manufactured documents, said I was committing abuse against her in front of witnesses, and she wanted everyone to see it for what it was. Each claim landed in a room where people were reading the evidence on their own screens while she was making it. Then Kayla's father, who had been sitting completely still since the inserts went around, looked at her, said nothing, just looked at her. Her own dad just staring at her without saying a word. That's what finally shut it down. Her face changed. I looked at Kayla once. My lawyer has everything. I walked out. My brother followed. 3 of my friends followed without discussion. About a third of the room filed out behind us into the parking lot. Quietly, no announcement, just making clear which side of this thing they were standing on without needing to say it out loud. I learned through my friend Joel that after we left, the room sat in near silence for close to 3 minutes. The first person to speak was Kayla's father, who turned to her and said, "Did you know this was coming today?" She didn't answer him. I drove home, sat on the couch, let the apartment be quiet for a long time. The online version came within the hour. Brianna, one of Kayla's close friends, had a thread posted before the venue had finished clearing out, called me a calculated predator who'd staged a public ambush on a recovering postpartum woman as an act of coercive control. Someone filmed part of the party, and the clip spread on a short-form platform. For about 36 hours, I was the villain of a narrative built specifically to make me one. I didn't respond to any of it personally. My lawyer sent cease and desist notices to 3 accounts that had used identifiable party footage without consent. My friend Joel, with my explicit authorization, posted the evidence packet, the 4 group chat screenshots, the blood type mismatch with a brief genetics explanation, the Portland itinerary with dates, and 2 of Kayla's direct messages with Caden showing timestamps. No editorial commentary, just the documents. The narrative collapsed inside 12 hours. Brianna's thread came down. The clip disappeared. Caden's response came through a manager via certified letter to my lawyer. Cease and desist demanding retraction of allegedly defamatory statements, paired with a non-disclosure agreement and a payment offer in the low 6 figures, framed as goodwill compensation rather than an admission, which is the legal equivalent of leaving a 20 on the counter on your way out and pretending it was always there. My lawyer called me the afternoon it arrived. They're buying silence. They can't afford it. Her response letter was 3 sentences. No interest in settlement. Any further legal threats would result in the evidence package being submitted in full to every relevant party, including sponsorship contacts and brand partners, and a copy of the motion to rebut marital presumption was attached so he could understand exactly where things stood. His primary sponsor, a nutrition and supplement brand that published a values-aligned partnerships policy prominently on their website, had already seen the group chat screenshots through Joel's post. They sent Caden a contract termination notice within 72 hours. His second major brand deal went quiet within the week and never publicly renewed. His mindset coaching program's testimonials page disappeared overnight, and the screenshots stayed up long after the story moved on. I watched none of this actively. Joel sent me occasional updates, and I read them when I had the bandwidth, which wasn't often. I had a divorce to get through. Caden appeared at my office building once. He stayed in the lobby, didn't try to come upstairs, didn't contact me directly, just stood near the front desk long enough to make his presence visible. The front desk called up to me. I sent word down through reception, contact my lawyer's office, and have security log the visit. Building security documented the timestamp, the duration, and a physical description. He left without speaking to anyone in the building. He didn't come back. I later learned through a professional mutual contact that when the nutrition brand dropped him, Caden called Kayla. I don't know exactly what was said, but according to the contact, the phrase, "You told me he wouldn't do anything," was part of that call. Whether or not those were the exact words, it tracks. Caden genuinely thought consequences were for other people. Anyway, the family sit-down happened mid-January. Kayla's parents asked for a meeting. I showed up with my lawyer on the phone. Speaker on. Her father opened directly. A real man steps up. A real man doesn't get drafted into fraud. Her mother said the baby was innocent in all of this, and that I was effectively punishing a child who'd done nothing wrong. So am I. Her father told me to sit back down. I was already heading for the door. He said my name in that voice, the one dads use when they expect the room to go quiet. I pushed through the door. 2 weeks after that, Kayla's aunt reached out through a mutual contact. Said what I'd found wasn't a surprise to everyone in the family, that Kayla had been enabled in patterns like this for years, and she was sorry I'd been the one left holding it. I didn't respond. I stored it and moved on. The compliance referral from October closed itself. The firm denied Caden's loan application after identifying the same inflated figures I'd flagged when I recused myself. He posted publicly that I'd engineered the denial as retaliation. Compliance cleared me without qualification. The accusation landed on the same platform where he just lost 2 brand deals. It went nowhere. The court-grade paternity test results came back mid-January, 0.00%. Same result as the private test, now formally in the record through certified chain of custody procedure. My lawyer submitted it alongside the motion. The marital presumption of paternity was rebutted by the court on January 22nd. My name was never on the birth certificate, and that omission was now legally confirmed rather than just procedurally pending. No legal standing as the father. No obligation to establish any. Kayla's attorney challenged the prenup. The argument? She'd signed under the emotional influence of a romantic relationship and hadn't fully grasped its implications. The court confirmed both parties had independent legal representation at signing, confirmed it was executed over 2 years before any relevant events, found no evidence of coercion, and upheld it in full. The infidelity clause triggered. Zero spousal support, attorney fees shifted to her. The bad faith deception clause was applied on the basis of the group chat exhibit, the strategy communications, the once he signs it doesn't matter line, and Kayla's message confirming Caden knew he might be the father. Her attorney objected to the deception clause as an overreach. The judge disagreed. She covered a portion of my legal costs. My separate property stayed mine. Her studio stayed hers. Settlement signed in late February. After that, everything got handled one step at a time. Kayla left the party with her parents that night and didn't come back. My lawyer filed for exclusive possession of the marital home the morning of January 7th, and the order was granted the same day. Locks changed that morning. Cameras installed by noon. Her belongings boxed with a witness present on January 8th, inventoried and staged in the front hallway for pickup. Everything documented. After January 6th, I communicated with Kayla exclusively through my lawyer's office. Not a single direct call, text, or email. No exceptions. She called my cell 11 times in the first week, each one unanswered and logged. She showed up at the building twice, both documented by security. On the second visit, she called 911 and told the responding officers that I was denying her access to her home. I met them at the door with the exclusive possession order, the lease in my name, and the formal separation notice my lawyer had filed. Answered every question they had without raising my voice. The officer looked at Kayla. "Ma'am, this is a civil matter. He has an exclusive possession order. He can't lock me out." "You moved out." I said it once, flat. The officer confirmed the order was valid and the separation was on record. They cleared the scene in under 20 minutes. She left. The group chat export appeared in the divorce proceedings as Exhibit C. The line about getting me to sign the birth certificate before the legal window closed was read into the official record by my lawyer. Kayla's attorney had no real response to it. Her credibility was gone before the hearing hit the halfway point. One final attempt, a direct email to my personal address, bypassing the communication order her own attorney had explicitly told her not to violate. Subject line, "I need you to understand." The body was a paragraph about how the prenup wasn't fair because she'd signed it in love and not expecting it to ever be used against her. Said a real husband would choose the family over the paperwork. Said I'd destroyed everything that mattered over pride, and it wasn't too late to fix it. I read it once. You chose the paperwork first. I forwarded it to my lawyer's office to be logged as a communication order violation. Then I changed my number. Done. There's one thing I never actually found out. Whether Caden ever formally stepped up for the kid. Last I heard through the professional network, he hadn't. But that's not my door anymore. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.